Welcome back to the podcast. Today we've got John Krotec with us, and he's going to show us and guide us in the men's work, right? In the kind of work where men get to be back to being men, right? This vibrancy of the basis of our society, the basis of our family, the basis of our community, not this word that people keep throwing out, this toxic masculinity. And we're going to really talk about what does it mean to be a great man. And John, I'm so grateful for you to be on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm humbled to be here. And yes, we do have an initiative and a mission, and we have work to do. And we would not be real men if we didn't do this kind of work. I shared last week when I was talking to Jonathan, your man behind the scenes, and I was saying, remember that Devo song a few years back, Are We Not Men? Right? And so I listened to that, and they're talking about the de-evolution of man. We're not talking about de-evolution here. We're talking about a positive evolution. And in this technical age, we need to utilize these tools that we've been given by powers much greater than us to be able to spread some wisdom and to help men, which will help women de facto everywhere around the globe. So thank you.
It was amazing. Before we started this podcast, we really talked about my 4 daughters and why I podcast and do this men's work, why it's so important to me for my daughters, not just for myself, but really it's about my daughters, right? Leaving a world where men can be, where great men lead great communities and the kind of men that I want around my daughters, that the work that you and I do really is in support of the great women in our world. And, how do we do great men's work, right? And bring back what it means to be a solid man.
Well, you're totally right. And I'm glad to be on that train. When I was in college a long time ago, one of my marketing female instructor that I had one of the books called Gloria or Amy Vanderbilt's Book of Etiquette. Right. And I was like a 19-year-old young guy. And, I knew it all. I was going to go off to business school and I was going to be the next J. Paul Getty. And what do I have to learn etiquette for? Right. And so I read that book, and I got to admit that book, Amy Vanderbilt's Complete Book of Etiquette, helped me in more ways than you could ever imagine to navigate the real world. And right now we just look around and we see decorum is missing. We see etiquette has all but disappeared. These genders that we talk about, the gender roles especially, some lines have been crossed. And so we did this deep dive not long ago when we started seeing that word toxic with masculinity. And we came up with a plan. And the plan is very simple. The children, which you just mentioned, your 4 daughters and the millions of other children that are out there, boys and girls, they're the future of our humanity. And these children, these young adults, they need to be able to discern truth from lies, facts from fiction, and reality from fantasy. And what's happening right now in the digital world, in the online and the World Wide Web and all this mass communication is human beings are being bombarded 24/7. So it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year by information. Those are the new threats, information. And so what we did, Anthony, is we identified 6 forms of information. Number 6 is the reliable information, by the way. And that's what takes critical thinking and intuition and logic and reason and common sense to figure out. But the other ones are misinformation and malinformation and disinformation. And now we have AI information, and we have noisy information, which we call social media. If you're getting your news on social media, back up a bit. But anyhow, so we have 5 forms of unreliable information, and we only have 1 form of the truth, right? Based on facts and science and things like that. And so when somebody tells you something and the hair on the back of your neck stands up because you know intuitively that it's not true, it just doesn't seem right, then begins the deep dive for critical thinking. And right now, the world in general is suffering from this intellectual laziness that we used to be taught in school, critical thinking, scientific method. It's just disappeared. And you mentioned earlier, Anthony, in one of our conversations about how AI has taken over brain power. Oh my gosh, just ask Google, they'll give you the answer. In the old days, we used to have to investigate and find out for ourselves. So anybody that understands propaganda or how unreliable information works, it's all in an effort to manipulate our behavior somehow for a purpose. So there's a lot we can talk about, but
so as we go down that path, in a world where it's louder than ever before, and I hold myself somewhat accountable, right? Because the men that came before me, look, my forefathers, my father, my real father died young, right? Gangster, bad behavior caused him to die. My stepfather then joins me. He did what he thought was right. But in a world where he left at 5 a.m., came home at 5 p.m., he sat at the dinner table, right? We had dinner at the dinner table every night, and that was required. And he told me taught me hard work was the fundamentals of being a great man. Now, there were some other skills in there that he didn't understand. Right, there was other skills that he didn't understand how to be. He didn't know how to be, his father came from a generation of just rub dirt in it and walk it off, kid. Right, there wasn't much of a communication ability or skill set, and I understand that. Look, like literally, his father was in survival mode. Right, like just enough money to bring food to the table. Right, they worked all day and they had just enough money and time to do that. And in a world where my stepfather gets there, he works hard, but doesn't have the verbal skills or the intellectual skills training that I believe was lacking. And I had to learn a lot of that. In fact, I had to unlearn a lot of the behaviors that he gave me by finding some great men around me to support me in finding ways to look inside, right? To find that inner message, to do the work here that no matter how much things I had, I was never going to be happy. Right. And doing some of that own self-reflective work really started because in a world where it's so noisy, if I don't have the foundations, if I don't have the bedrock of who I am as a human being, as a man, what does it mean to me to reliably count on these are my fundamentals? If the world's loud, every time somebody comes at you, oh, is that what it means to man? Oh, is that what it means to man? Oh, am I supposed to be this way? Or am I supposed to go gender? It could be anything. Am I supposed to be, I got to give up being a man and act more like a woman? And not that women are bad, but there's a different skill set that the society needs for men, right? There's some, there's a bit of discipline, right? Reliability, strength, right? The one that holds families together, right? My job is to hold my family together in good times and bad times. You go travel with all my kids, and there are days when our family wants to fall apart because of noise and tired and things, and my job is to bring them together. Right. And that's a skill that I had to learn through other great men. So I think that's a part that when we do this men's work together, that we have to go look at, all right, how do I find my foundation? Right. What does it mean? What are those foundational things? And no matter how loud the world gets, what are those foundational things that I go back to in the middle of a storm? Right. You like to do a military training, gun, sword, knife. Where are those things in the storm so that no matter how bad the battle is, I know where my foundation stuff is?
There's a lot there to digest. And thanks for pointing some of those things out. One of the things that and I'm glad you pointed out family because it's one of our hashtags. We did a deep dive on vintage gender roles, and we're not talking about identity. You could be a single mom and you might have to take on some male roles. It doesn't mean that you identify with a male. It just means you're executing some male roles, and vice versa for single men that are raising families. Same kind of thing. You might have to take on some female gender roles, but it doesn't mean that we're identifying as a woman. We just understand that those particular roles need to take place in a family if it's going to be healthy. So family is everything. What we did in our deep dive is that a man's primary role, everything else, we understand work and paying bills and all that. Work ethic's very important. But a man's primary role, vintage role, is to protect his family and his loved ones, which could be his neighborhood, his street, whatever, from threats. And back in the day, the threats were mastodons and tribes over the mountains and saber-toothed tigers and all of that. And every now and then a man and his friends in the tribe would have to go get violent, toxic to save the family from the mastodon that's traipsing through their location, right? Well, all those threats have gone away. So the threats now are information threats. And these information threats, we talked about it earlier, are designed to disrupt, to emasculate a man, especially the narrative of toxic masculinity. And if we can emasculate a man and confuse him, then what happens? A man is thrown off of his primary purpose. He has no guide. Without a purpose, without a plan, and with all of this confusion, we start to see the breakdown of families, which is what we're seeing. And I think this recently, this devastating thing that just recently happened with Charlie Kirk. And I think that, and not to make this political, but the first thing he says is family. This is all about the family. The family is the gift. You have 4 daughters. You understand what a gift that is, Anthony, and you understand the role. You know, we talk about the good old days. I kind of grew up in the same family. My dad was from Pittsburgh. We were Croatians. My grandparents came from Yugoslavia. On my mom's side, they came over much earlier. They were Irish. But anyhow, my dad ruled by the school of hard knocks. I didn't see him in the morning. He went off to work. Mom, with 4 kids, did the best she could. And my dad would come home. And if there was anything that he needed to know, Mom was going to tell him, or the neighbor down the street was going to tell him. So I learned very quickly how important family was. And even though I wasn't happy all the time with the way I was disciplined, I walked away with some very foundational subsets, what you talk about, some behaviors that have helped me to navigate the world out there and to fulfill my role as a masculine man. And guess what? I didn't ask to be born this way. This is the way it happened, but I stepped into that role just like you have. And we're doing our best to understand the role of gender in today's digital society world and how we can move forward. And instead of creating more chaos and confusion and the breakup of more families, we hope to be more of a positive force in the world and to move forward. And that's what we did with the Sentinel Handbook. We wrote it in 9 languages, Anthony. It's like 9 pages or 30 pages. And it's basically an 8th grader can understand it. And I'm not to denigrate 8th graders because some of them are pretty smart these days. But imagine a baseline little bitty handbook where the next time you hear something in the news or see something that doesn't seem right, we can give you this, what we call the human intuition sniff test, the HIST, like histamines. And you can take this process to determine the validity and the veracity of the information that you've heard. We all need to become sentinels of information. And a sentinel watches. And if you're a man, you need to protect your family. You need to understand what they're looking at, what kind of things are being taught at school. And you need to be the buffer from the outside world, which is trying to destroy a family, rhetorically speaking, and what's going on inside your family. That's your family. You're the man and the head of the household. You have to fulfill your role that you might not have asked for, but you've been blessed with it since birth. So my dad was tough, but he did teach me the value of family. And he did teach me how to be courageous, and he did teach me teamwork and that work ethic. And those things, those very foundational cores, is what we can grasp onto because there's something, they're concrete, and they don't fail. The man's role has been protecting his family since the beginning of time, and we need to support that.
Well, and the other part I think it's really crucial to tell men is you're perfectly equipped to do it. That in you is the DNA to do this. In a world where they're telling you you don't and you shouldn't, and you know what the gender roles or what it means to be a man is in question, you're built fundamentally at a prehistoric level to do the work you need to do as a man. Now, have you had access to it yet? A lot of men in today's society have not accessed that DNA, right? They're taught not to, and they've been shamed from it. And when you go there, bad boy, there is one of my beliefs of why we're messing up men, is that in that when I access that primal part of me, that protector, warrior that's inside of me that goes out and, hey, takes care of my family. And today I don't have dinosaurs. For Christ's sakes, I've got Costco. I've got more food than my grandparents. We buy more food than my grandparents ever ate. And we throw out more than they ever ate. And, in a world where we've got so much abundance, right? There's these items that are out there that can be overwhelming for the brain, right? So here, look, if we can distract men over here, right? And we can have them forget what the foundations of a man are, right? Then I can control them. And a controlled man is now a puppet to all these evil factions that are really trying to break down the core. If I could break down the man, I could break down the family. If I could break down the family, I can break down the society. If I can break down a society, I can take them over.
Everything you just said is it's 1,000% true. And, let's take it back to a humanistic viewpoint. And I don't know how they do it, but we all have emotions. Humans have emotions. It's what differentiates us from a lot of those animals in the animal kingdom, right? So what you just said, Anthony, if men can be confused, if men can feel chaotic about who they are, if men are in a conflict with other human beings, which is a low vibrational state, we have fear and we have anxiety and we have conflict and confusion and all of these things that are lower vibrational states that throw men off of our role. Okay. Now at the top end of that, we have not hate, we have like love. We have, higher consciousness. We have happiness. We have joy. We have all of these great emotions that make life really worth living. Life is worth living, but at a different level. And so what emotion is the step off point to go from these lower frequencies, which we see much of the world in today, to that higher consciousness state where men fulfill their roles, where women fulfill their roles, and we move forward in a sustainable way? It's called courage. You have to dig deep. You have to look in the mirror, quit blaming everybody else and playing the victimology game. Look at yourself in the mirror, fellas, and love that guy. Forgive that guy for any mistakes he's made. We've all made mistakes, but love the man in the mirror. And I'll tell you something, when I was going through cognitive behavioral therapy for traumatic brain injury to deal with the childhood bad situation that I experienced, my therapist was looking at me 3 months into it and she's smiling. And I'm like, she had never done that before. So I said, what's going on, Cheryl? She says, you make me happy. Okay. In all my years of being a psychotherapist, you're one of those rare people that actually do the work, the tough work that it takes to turn things around. And one of the things she told me when I was going through a rough time personally with insomnia, she said, the next time you wake up at 1:30, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, turn on a light, get up, don't toss and turn, go in there to the mirror inside the bathroom, flip it on, and you look at that guy in the mirror and you tell that guy that you loved him, right? Like you're talking to yourself. So that night, sure enough, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm tossing, I'm turning. My wife and I are in the separation type mode. And I flip on the light and I go in there. I look around. This is, and I go, I love you. I flick off the light. I go back to bed and I'm like, I had never told myself. And I'm looking around to see if somebody's in there looking at me. So the next night I'd go in there. I love you, John. You're a good dude, man. You're making up for past mistakes. Be brave. So it got easier and easier and easier. Oh, and by the way, I forgive you for doing that thing that created so much consternation with your better half, right? So it starts there. It starts with us, rather than vacillate. And I call it the human galaxy theory. It's a theory I came up with a really cool woman down in Florida. Don't vacillate in the shame, blame, guilt game. And I call that the black hole human galaxy, where all we do is spin. We blame all of our troubles on somebody else. We feel guilty about things that we needed to have done. We shame other people. We shame ourselves, but we just, look at a black hole. It just sucks all the energy from the universe around it. You ever gone into a meeting and you meet somebody, Anthony, and you shake their hand and they zap the energy right out of you?
Oh yeah.
It's
Come
like,
on, there's
whoa.
plenty of those. Absolutely.
That's a black hole human galaxy. They're spinning, their energy, they're vampires. So we came up with that. And the emotion that gets us out of the black hole galaxy mindset is courage. You ever seen a spiral galaxy? A spiral galaxy has a center core of light, usually a huge sun, and these arms spin. And they're beautiful. Spiral galaxies are beautiful, and there's millions of them in the universe. So we go from black hole into this galaxy, spiral galaxy, and what we're doing is we're asking people questions. We're talking. We're out there in the universe spreading wisdom and absorbing wisdom and all these things. We're no longer the black hole, right? The last galaxy is the contributory galaxy. This is one that we made up, right? The contributory galaxy person is a guy like you, is a guy like myself, and many others, thousands of men out there and women that are taking their wisdom and they're contributing to the betterment of the entire universe because we're sharing stories, because we really care to make a mark, to help people to improve their lives. We've been there, we've done that. We go into these self-help sections in the bookstore, and there's thousands of self-help books, and they're all great. These are contributory galaxy people who are selling their wisdom back to you. Comes with a cost, right? And that's what we do. So we go from black hole state. We have some courage. We start loving ourselves. We start forgiving ourselves. We start interacting with other spiral galaxy people. And when we've reached a certain state of higher consciousness, then we say, holy cow, let's contribute. Let's give back. So with Neo Masculinity, we want to empower men and women by giving them tools to analyze information for its validity. And we do this to protect our families. Protecting families is our primary purpose, and that's why we exist.
It's beautiful when you really go through that sequencing of events, right? When we start to identify, all right, here I am. I would like to make a change in my life, right? I realize my life isn't working the way it is. And by the way, men, there's lots of you out there that are suffering as men. You're out there suffering, going, all right, I'm suffering. I know that I'm suffering. I'd like to make a change in a world where do I start? What is it that, look, a lot of our young, and I hold myself accountable for the men in my life. I've got those 4 beautiful daughters, but I also have 3 great sons. And I hold myself accountable for the work I do with my sons, right? For the work that I do with them. In that, maybe my father, and I'm not mad at him for it, right? He just didn't have the language or society or a group of men around him to guide him or support him in it, right? In fact, my father belonged to a group of gangsters, right? And they believed that the work that they did was what they did to survive their families, right? Maybe a different kind of survival, right here. And I can't, I'm not judging him for it. It is what it was at the time, and that's how they believed in guns and the way they did. That's what they did to survive. And unfortunately, he passed away because of that, and leaves me empty there. Now, maybe the gift of that is I get to reinvent what it means to be a man for me, and then I get to find some great men that are really inspiring me to do the work that's different than that, right? I don't have to go out and shoot guns or fight people. Here, look, if it needs to be done, I've got them, and we will, promise you. But I don't need to live from that warrior. I can access that warrior. Look, I have that warrior right. It's right there, and he's ready to react if needed. And here, I'm proud of that. I'm not ashamed of that. And today I work on the other words, the other languages. What does it mean to be able to communicate? What does it mean to hold a young man as he becomes a warrior? What does it mean to guide them, right? We were talking before the show, for thousands of years, we walked tribally, right? We would walk with elders, and the elders might tell us, all right, hey, John, hey, don't walk over there. Watch out when you walk on those sticks. Come up downwind from the animal. or come upwind from the animal, right? Come, watch how you approach, right? It would teach us how to hold a spear and how to throw it, right? How to eat, how to cook, how to hunt, right? We had people that guided us, right? In a world today when a lot of us men, I know I was, for a lot of part of my life, I was so busy, I didn't guide my young men, right? Yeah, my guidance was maybe an hour or two at the end of the night after a long day's work when I was exhausted, maybe a couple of minutes after dinner I could spend with them. So that guidance was left to social media, video games, schools. It wasn't. I didn't get to walk hand in glove with them, and a lot of that work I've had to go back and kind of really double down on it, right? Because I feel like I've left some of that stuff that my duty wasn't there. Now I gave some good fundamentals. And I'm not saying I'm not shame myself for it, but today I really do double down on the work I do with the men in my life, right? And it's really important to me because those are the men that will affect my daughters later on. And so we go back, we look at that, and now we start to look at, now we get inspired and we find great men like your group. I love this group, and I love all the men's groups that bring men together to be better men. I love it. I've had many of them on the podcast, and my goal is to continue to bring great men's groups on that do, and women's groups. But in my genre, the men's group. And then once we get it, I don't think we keep it unless we give it away, right? I think that you don't really get it until somebody else gets that you get it, right? I think that's where the great wisdom of the elders was, that as they taught the young people, it actually embedded better, it embedded deeper. They became it. They lived it. They were it, right? In the teaching of it. And that's how we keep it, by giving it away.
You're very intelligent and intuitive. And one thing what you described, we've talked about family and the role of men and women, and now what we're talking about is a process of education. And you're totally spot on. People with gray hair, actually, we'd listen to them. People of authority, we'd listen to them. They were educating us. They were teaching us, and especially the elders. The elders in tribal communities were revered. Those are the people you listen to. Like you said, don't go next to the sticks, because we know the crocodiles like to lay on the bank. And so the education process was left up to the people that really cared about it. So we move into an age now where sometimes just a rubber stamp or checking a box is the caring that the people who are educating our children are doing. Now, there's a lot of phenomenal teachers out there. I can name a lot of them in my own life. Teachers that actually took the time because they cared about their profession, but more than that, they cared about the students. And I got to tell you, I was a rambunctious young guy and very rebellious. And
no way, John. Come on.
No,
Come
on. And there were teachers, God
Yeah.
bless them. They would pull me aside. They'd look at me and they'd go, "John, really? You are not going to pass American history unless you start coming to class. Oh, there was a report that you were drinking beer at one of the football games. First thing in the morning on a Monday, Coach Rapolsky. We don't want to hear about it again. Are you drinking at the football games?" But there were teachers nowadays, they just send you to the office. They don't care. Teachers actually took the time. And that's how we as parents, men and women, need to care about the people who we're raising. I'm not saying that we have to make them clones of us, because all children have to have the ability and the freedom to be themselves. But we can be certainly a guide. And we need
John,
more guides these days.
Let me get you in there, because look, this is one of those ones where I suffer in a world that's so damn loud, right? I mean, to be great, to slow down, and to be the kind of teacher that's, I had Mrs. Edwards, right? Her Mrs. Edwards, my first grade teacher. My mother worked 3 jobs. After my dad died, my mom worked 3 jobs. I'd make lunch for myself, right? And my lunch sometimes was a mess, right? I was a 7-year-old kid, right? I was like this little kid trying to make lunch, and it was a mess. And sometimes I'd open my bag up and and she'd feel sad for me. And as a great teacher, she used to make me lunch and bring me lunch in a cute little brown bag with the edges cut off and snack pack. And she'd write a little note on there for me. And it was a magical experience having a teacher who cared for me. like in a world where it's harder, here, I'm not sure I'm making a judgment. I don't know if it's really harder. I don't know if we have more skills, but where it's hard to do those acts of kindness, right? To give back, right? I think it behooves us now more than ever to reach back and support our communities in those little acts of kindness, those little spaces where we go, okay, I'm not, but it feels overwhelming sometimes. Like I want to do it more and more and more, but it feels overwhelming. All right. To be the coach that says, hey, John, let's watch it with the drinking. Right. Hey, John, let's not we don't do that here in our community. I don't need you to be a jackass in our school football games. Right. I need you to show up. That held you accountable and supported us. Right. In a world where it's so overwhelming, right? How do we teach our men, and how do we embody that being?
Well, it takes, thanks for sharing some of those. It takes caring. It just takes somebody who cares. And, we're talking about teachers right now, but there's a lot of people out there. I haven't given up on humankind yet.
That's right.
We can't give up because we just need to quit. We need to continue on. The past is the past. We can learn from the past. Sounds so cliche and woo-woo. But the reality is we can't change it. We can learn from it. Tomorrow hasn't come yet. So why am I going to focus on tomorrow morning instead of focus on this show right now? We need to care. We need to focus, and we need to have the desire. My wife used to say this, guy. She said, every time you point the finger at somebody, and we've all heard this, there's 4 fingers pointing back, right? It's so true. How can we pass judgment? We haven't walked in those people's shoes. And yeah, they might have been an idiot for that one split second in their life, but it doesn't mean the rest of their life they exhibit idiocy. So rather than point the finger outside of ourselves, we need to go inward. And I'm not talking about, we need to do deep work. There's a fellow by the name of, what's his name? Cal Newport, Dr. Cal Newport. He wrote a book a few years back called Deep Work. And I didn't really understand it at first, but it was all about what you just described, Anthony, with all of this confusion and all of this noise. It was a time to reset, to take a deep breath, to sit back from the noise of this digital age and to concentrate on the things that really matter. There was a movie not long ago called The Social Dilemma. I don't know if you ever had a chance to see it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And if you look it up, for anybody that hasn't seen it, and even the people that have developed these platforms, these social media communities, most of them won't even let their own children get on them. And if you start to study and dig deep about the psychology of algorithms or how they actually work and integrate, you start to see how everything we do in the digital world is being manipulated somehow. And as we start to gain knowledge and wisdom, I got to tell you, Anthony, you and I could probably watch TV all day long and we could probably go, look, that's nonsense. Look, that's nonsense. Look, that's not true. And we have people who are in power who are letting our children see this kind of stuff. And we need to be the sentinels. Like I said earlier, we need to be the guys on the watchtower. You watch my back, Anthony, I got your front, man. And
that's right.
And your family's in the tower.
That's right.
They're coming for your family. I'm here with you to protect your family because that's what men do. We protect the family. So we're not talking identity. We're not talking about those kinds of things. We're not talking about sex. We're talking about roles. And man, if you're not fulfilling your role, if you've lost your purpose in life, today is better than any day to go in there and look at that guy and say, I'm going to turn my life around and I'm going to be comfortable with being a man. I'm not going to listen. That's the first actionable thing any person, any man can do is to embrace and be comfortable in his own skin. I'm not buying toxic masculinity anymore. Unless it's, of course, we're out to dinner and our wives get insulted by the next table and it's a guy trying to bully our wives, then I might have something to say about it. You might see some toxicity. But Real men use violence as last resort. They'll
Absolutely.
do everything they can not to take it to that level.
Well, so we start to look at the fundamentals, right? Because remember, to be a man is this big story, right? We've got a really, and I think at a cellular level we know how to do it, and I think some days for those young men that are out there, it gets overwhelming, right? So what does it mean? They know they want to do it, they're suffering, right? And there was a great speech by Admiral McRaven, I believe his name is, and he starts by saying. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful speech. He starts by saying, "Start by making your bed in the morning." Right? It literally starts with, you know what? You're look. You don't have to go out and find the world. You're not taking over everything. You don't need to go raise a family tomorrow. But how about tomorrow morning? We start by making my bed, so that I start with my first thing out of the day is a win. Now I've added to it. How about get on my knees and ask my higher power for some grace and gratitude and wisdom to be guided today. Looking at it for you, whatever that higher power is for you. I don't mean to be religious or tell you who your God is, but maybe it's a gift in saying, hey, Mr. Higher Power, I'd like to be guided today with some wisdom to help others. And maybe by starting by making my bed, so when I come back to my bedroom at night, I can look and go, nice. Right here. And I mean, my wife, we got like an Italian bed. We got all these freaking fancy pillows up there. And we got all, seriously, there's a bunch of them up there. And I hate putting the pillows. I hate it. Let me tell you something. I hate putting those pillows in there. And every time I do it, I just remember Admiral McRaven saying, make your bed. And when I come back to that bed and it's perfectly made, there's a part of my inside of me that goes, yeah. Likewise, the toilet paper roll. My wife hates putting it. She won't change. My wife has never changed a toilet paper roll.
I know we're not married to the same person. My wife does the same thing.
I don't get it. But here, and I used to get so mad. I was like, what, really? You can't change the damn toilet paper roll? Seriously. And I could walk out there and start a whole nonsensical fight with her. But I just stopped. And I just get a toilet paper roll and I put it on there and I put the right way for her. And I make sure it's there and I don't argue about it. Now, look. This isn't some genius thing. I'm not some guru. It's just in the fundamentals of just doing it. Now look, I can tell you that I'm not perfect with my wife. I'm arguing with her today about something. But even in the arguments today, I've learned the best thing I can do some days is just not move my lips. And if I don't move my lips, I don't blow the relationship up. And I live to fight a better relationship tomorrow. And as long as I don't blow them up. And sometimes the best I can do is in that. And my want is not that these are the guru lessons of but there are some fundamentals that we can start to work on, right? My personal discipline, getting up in the morning and going to the gym. Now, it took me years to get from my bed to my sneakers to out the door, years to do that on a consistent basis. Today, I do that every single day, right? I get up every work day. I go to the gym, and it starts with the doing hard things first, gets Fred in my head, that voice. I beat him, right? I'm worth it. This body, this temple, this warrior, I can shape. So, I think that some of the stuff that we do in the men's work doesn't have to be this revolutionary, you got to go change everything overnight. Make your bed, go to the gym, start with those two fundamentals, get on your knees and ask a higher power for some guide. If your higher power is your men's group, here, literally, it could be your men's group. Hey, today I'm going to be guided by the men of my group today to be a better man. What are the principles they taught me this week? Right? What are in my men's group, every week we do a stretch, right? Every Monday night we have a men's group. We meet from 7 to 9:30. And at the end of it, we all create a stretch for ourselves. And I work on that stretch for the week. And that stretch is just a reminder. It's not some earth-shaking thing. I don't have to go change. I don't have to change the weather. I'm not boiling the ocean. I can literally just work on, all right, this week's my stretch this week is eat better. This week I'm on a protein diet all week. And, look, it just meal by meal, right? So I think that's the stuff that I think we look at is, first of all, just wanting to do that, right? Just not that we do it perfectly, practice these principles, but just even being in the neighborhood of wanting to do that, John, it feels like we haven't inspired men to want to do that.
Exactly, we haven't. And that desire has to come from each individual. One of the things that we did in our research, and we talked about higher power, spiritual beliefs, whatever it is what we found is most tribes, most communities, most groups of beings, human beings, had a spiritual aspect to their existence. You know, they had great reverence for the planet, for all the things that they saw every day. They would pray that the buffalo would come. And there was, you know, they had this spiritual aspect to the way they conducted themselves. I'm not going to say it was perfect, right? But there was that aspect. And it seems that with the Industrial Revolution, the spiritual aspect of the community, the state became the spirit. You know, the business became the spirit. There was a shift, and who doesn't like money? We get it. We have to have money to survive. But the reality is that people placed wealth and riches above the spiritual foundation of communities. It had been like that for centuries. The Industrial Revolution not only disrupted industry, but it disrupted the spiritual aspect of human being communities. You talk about discipline. Well, discipline is one of the top 10 leadership traits that if you were to take a man or woman and they were great leaders, one of the things that they adhered to was discipline. And it was like you said, it was like chopping wood. You don't take a bunch of unchopped wood and create a stack of chopped wood without doing the work. You have to be disciplined, because if you don't do the work and you don't execute on that, when winter time comes around, your family's going to freeze. So we talk about discipline to chop wood. Do you have the discipline to chop wood to make your life better than it is right now? We can always self-improve. And so we talk about embracing your masculinity, being comfortable, reigniting your purpose again, you know, your family, your loved ones, educating them with time. We talk about time. We don't have to do it overnight, but quit wasting your time. Get on with it. Just do it. What did Nike say in that commercial? You know,
Just do it.
Just do it. Just change. Make the changes. And you said it earlier, Anthony. You said it freaking earlier, man. You said that every single one of us has the tools in our toolbox to make the changes that we need to make our lives better and our families' lives better, more protected.
So we say that. Now, remember, in a world of noise, how do we access that, John? Right? Like, how do we start to access? I really want to make sure our guests get access to that in a world where, hey fellas, for those of you that are out there going, I don't know what to do, right? I feel overwhelming. First thing I want you to understand is this: I don't know what to do behavior is slowing you down. You do know what to do. Now, in a world where your brain is going because of social media, it might be start in a place where you slow down and get quiet. Right now, in a world where we're addicted to our phones and getting quiet is almost impossible, because look, I even feel it myself, right? Social media, scrolling, getting to a place where I can get access to knowing, right? Just a lot of social media stuff has made your brain like a junkie on the tit of, you know, you're drinking off the tit of social media there. You just literally can't stop drinking off of it. So John, we talk about what are the basics to get to the knowing?
Good question. I'll go back to Dr. Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. And one thing that I started to do, give yourself the anger litmus test. First of all, if you're going to social media or news stations, watch it for 10 minutes and see if you get angry. Because if you get angry, it means that you're already operating in a lower vibrational state. Anger is what they want to elicit. It's how algorithms work. If you keep people angry and you keep them off their game, they're easier to manipulate behavior-wise. So Cal Newport said, turn it off. The first thing he did is said, get yourself a timer, kitchen timer, and put it on for 1 hour. Go ahead and watch the computer. If your business is on the computer or you have something digital you have to do it, but only watch it for an hour. And he said you can actually reduce the time and wean yourself off from platforms and news stations that are making you angry. Anger is not where we want to operate.
How hard is it for you to do that? Because I've been trying to do no social media Sundays. I heard, John, it's been 2 years. I got one Sunday in 2 years with no phone.
Well,
it's crazy.
Build on it. And, and you said that, give yourself a pat on the back for that one Sunday. victory to the that victory. But you have to build on it. And you said something just a few minutes ago. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to build on it. Rome wasn't built in a day. Oh my gosh, we've heard that, right? So build on it. I would say, and we've heard this from lots of people that are giving us wisdom, buy yourself, go down to Barnes and Noble, or wherever you have a office supply store or whatnot, buy a journal. It sounds so basic, but buy a journal, and that journal is your best friend. Start journaling in it. Write down the date, write down the day, write down what time it is, and start writing things that mean something to you. What are your goals in life? How are you feeling right now? What is it that you want to do in your life to change things? What 3 things can you do for your wife? Oh, we can change the toilet paper roll. Start building a personal conversation with yourself in a journal. Nobody has to see it. It's kind of like Dear Diary. You don't have to share it with anybody, but share it with yourself every single day.
I love it. Like, look,
and be honest with yourself.
Here, get 2 pages, two pages in a journal of just go. A word vomit. Doesn't have to make sense. Literally just get in the practice of a 2-pager a day, right? I've got a journal by my bed. I write in it. Now, I'm not going to tell you I've been perfect about it. The social media took over this last year, right? I was disciplined about it. Every 10 pages of reading every single night and 2 pages in that journal. And the addiction of social media has kicked in. And I think one of the reasons why you're here is to inspire me to get back to that, 2 pages and 10, 2 and 10, right? 2 and 10 was 2 pages of writing, 10 pages of reading. And that really got my brain ready to go to bed, right? It was a way to kind of spool that in. And for those of you who've never journaled or never done this, right, it may start with literally just buying the journal. Like right now, while we're talking, in fact, Jonathan, let's put that down below. Let's go put a link to a nice little journal down below. We'll inspire you to go buy one on Amazon. Go look at the link down below. There'll be a link to a journal that you can buy right now. It's just clear pages. Get 2 of them done and ask yourself some questions. John, I love the questions. Let's, inspire some questions that are easy to fill out. So, what might be 5 questions we could put down there that might inspire some writing? And by the way, you can make these questions your own, right, that work for you. So let's think of 5 questions that we might put down there for the writer. And where do we start?
Well, I would say very first thing is ask yourself, are you honest? Am I honest? We're talking about integrity here, a foundational aspect of living a life. Ask yourself. Then ask yourself, what do I do in my life that I'd love to see changed? Let me see. Hold it. I want to be less angry. Okay. Well, that means I need to turn off social media. Ask yourself, how do you want to feel? Or how are you feeling? What you've basically said, Anthony, is, and this is great because we all need to go there. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to be tough as nails on us.
Yeah. I mean, looking at that, was I resentful today? Was I selfish today? Was I guilty? Did I feel guilty today? Did I, find some questions that I think that resentment, where did I have fear today? Like some of those are good feeling check-in questions. I think that they unwind a bunch of results. Was I resentful? I always love that question. Like, who was I mad at today and why? And then the one that's a real game changer is, what was my part in it? Right.
And believe me, it takes 2 to tango.
Yeah. Right. Here, 99 here, 100% of the time I had some part in it. Right. If I really deep down and go, all right, what was my part in it? What was my part in why am I mad at my wife, or why am I mad at that guy next door? Or why am I mad at the guy who works for me? There's some part I hold, because the truth is when I get to that answer, I unwind, stop being a victim, and I have agency, right? I go from victim to agency, and in agency, I can do something about it and really create something different. In victim, I'm kind of victim too, and it's not much I can do to it. So I think that's a good spot to start. Did I feel guilty or resentful or fearful? Those are some good feeling questions to ask under that feeling section you're talking about.
Absolutely. And fear is the greatest it stymies anything that's positive. If you're fearful, and it's good to have a healthy fear. If we're walking on the sticks and we know there's a crocodile there, we got to be aware. But if we start looking and doing the deep dive, the research on propaganda or algorithms, behavior modification, if even if you know just the very basics of propaganda and how it affects the human mind, which creates anger, which creates the lack of self-agency. We can blame it on somebody else. It's victimology. And victimology is a great way to manipulate people in mass. We have to be intelligent. We have to quit being intellectually lazy. We have to turn the noise off. And there was a book called Walk in the Woods. I can't remember who wrote it. But human beings we're not designed to get digital stimulus 24/7. We're not designed. We need interaction. And I love the fact that you're going to the gym because you've added a thing to your life that's going to improve you physically, but you're creating social interaction. And anytime a human being gets isolated and doesn't have, we're communal beings. Human beings are all about family. It's what makes us who we are. What makes us our communities operate in a sustainable way. But if we're all these silos of isolation and anger because we're watching something that may not be true, and chances are it isn't, it's based on somebody else's narrative, then we're creating a recipe for an unsustainable human population.
My favorite narrative in the morning is, I love meeting the guy who unlocks the door at the gym. There is something about, so there's two guys that unlock the door most days at the gym. One guy's named Kevin, one guy's named John. I love when they're unlocking that door, I'm on the other side to open it.
Nice, man.
There's a way of being that just goes boom, bam. It's a gift that I give myself by being on the other side of that door. And there's a line of people we call them the 5:30 AMers. There's a line of people. I hold that door open and welcome them in because I love being part of a group of human beings that are all in spirit of their bodies and their souls, and the work that we do at 5 a.m., the hard work we do in the dark. It's most of the time it's dark. The hard work we do in the dark really gives me the energy during the light to live a life that's worth living, right? And those are like little unlocks. So look, I'm not telling you, look, that's not some sort of genius unlock, but for me, it's an unlock, right? Getting the sneakers got me to the gym. Getting in the gym and opening that door is an unlock, right? In that feeling of accomplishment, just that little unlock. It's not save the world. It's just a mental unlock, right? So I think that's a good one.
That's a great one, and thanks for sharing that. That wisdom right there that you just gave to your audience and we just talked about, that's ageless, it's timeless, it's a metaphor that has great value. And any of the things that we're talking about when it comes to wisdom and we're sharing, it's exactly that. None of this stuff is new. It's just Anthony and John repackaging the wisdom that we've learned from others and sharing that wisdom in a positive way. We're not trying to incite riots. We're not trying to incite anger. We're trying to incite desire to be better, desire to protect your family, desire to do the things that you need to do. It doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes and have challenges, but that's life, and it's, mind, body, spirit. We didn't come up with that. That's been out there since the beginning of time. What goes in stays in. And if it's bad stuff going in there, then the bad stuff is going to come out. If we say to ourselves, well, I don't believe that, that's not true, it's not based on fact, then that narrative can go right out with the kitchen, with the bath water, not with the baby, but with the bath water that's dirty. And those are the things that we can do. And it takes courage. None of this is easy. Self-improvement and self-agency and self-responsibility, it's so easy to blame our mental state on somebody else. Well, my dad beat my butt all the time, right. and that's why I'm violent. And my girlfriend cheated on me all the time in college, and that's why I cheat. We can always use something to justify negative behavior. But until we reach down and grab them, pun intended, until we reach down and grab them, we're never going to be real men. Real men are not violent. Real men are not trying to create
Well,
trouble.
hold on. We're not violent unless needed.
Unless needed. But
Exactly right. Here, we're not violent, but we have access
last resort.
Here, but here, I can be violent if needed, right?
Absolutely,
and I'm absolutely here, and I want men to know that it's okay. Stop telling men it's here. If you need to be violent for your protect your family,
and that's what that quiver is. Oh yeah, your family is everything.
That's right. That's
but
right.
they make it sound like a masculine man is violent, and
no.
Oh yeah, and like you say, we can be, but real men understand love. They understand affection. They understand, yes, and they understand integrity, responsibility. They understand their role. And when a man can figure out his role, and it's not a negative role, then he has at least the fertile ground to do something with his life in a positive way. Be kind and respectful to other people, but don't take any shit, especially if what they're trying to tell you is exactly that. That's that toxicity that we're talking about. And guess what? If you're telling my family, my children, my daughters, my sons something that's totally not true and is creating trouble in their lives and in our family, we're going to 86 you. Remember the 86 thing?
That's
and that
right.
doesn't mean, anyhow. I'm preaching to the choir.
So, John, here's what I really want to make sure before we run out of time. I want men. There are a lot of men on this podcast right now that want to join your group. That want to get involved in the work you're doing. That want to get the recipe and really dial it in. I want to make sure they have access to this. Look, men, if you're looking for a home, if you're looking for a place, if you're looking for a group to belong to, I want you to get involved here, right? Grab a men's group. John's got a great group of men. John, let's talk a little bit about your group, what your group does, when they meet, how they get together. How do men get involved with your group?
Well, it's more of an initiative, but it is a group. It's Neo Masculinity, neomasculinity.solutions, right?
And we'll put all that down below. That's all going to be down in the description below.
Thank you. If you look up the Google definition of neo masculinity, and by the way, if you go to our website and sign up, we've got 10 strategies that you could start right today that'll help you to fulfill your role. But what we've done is we've created this website, and we're giving tools to men and women to fulfill those gender roles. We are an information analysis website that is pushing the needle. We're moving forward, and we're moving forward by giving these tools to the people that come and sign up. We're also working on, so we have the Neo Masculinity Handbook, the Sentinel Handbook. We've got that freebie right on the homepage. We are now working on 4 masterclasses: leadership, healing, trauma, one on neo masculinity, and one on transition from military to civilian. And we're also working on some curricula, which will be available very soon. We have a mini course called Brain Freeze, which lays the groundwork for breaking the ice on critical thinking. But we're working on a project called the Brainery. It's kind of like a granary. We teach brains, not grains. And we have 4 silos. One's college, one's high school, one's middle school, and one is grade school, kindergarten through, middle school. And what we've done is we're working on curriculums to reignite intuition, critical thinking, common sense, scientific method, logic, and reason. We're working on an accreditation for the college program, but we're offering a silo that we can introduce at the global level to get humankind back on track with wisdom.
And my belief is we're not broken like this. It's just we got to just kick it back to where we were. I mean, it's not that far off, men. We're not that far away from just getting back and grabbing hold of that, right? So it's not too hard of a lift. Listen to what John's saying and jump into one of these classes, jump into one of these courses, try it on.
Try it on, exactly. And you don't know till you jump in the pool. How cold is the water, or how are you going to know unless you jump in? But you're right, we're not far off. We've gotten off track just a little bit, but imagine having these information analysis tools that can help you be a better father, a better husband, a better man. A few years back, I remember as a veteran, I contacted this guy as a young man. He was in his 40s. He's gone now. But he only worked with 2 men a year. Revitalized Spartan is what the name of his company was. And what he did was he helped men, only 2 customers a year, wasn't inexpensive. And before I had a chance to sign up, he had a massive aneurysm while he was in Southeast Asia. I think he was on his honeymoon, actually. And so I never got to take the course. But guess what? There's so much information out there, and there's so many men like Anthony and myself that want to help you get back on track, want to help you find your purpose again. And I like what you said, Anthony, about we're not that far off. It's only a little tick. Can start with a journal, can start with desire, can start educating yourself on how algorithms work, how propaganda works, how pointing the finger means that there's something else coming back at you. We've got to be men. And I'll go back to that thing that we were laughing about at the beginning, Devo, the group Devo, 1980s or something, Are We Not Men? And then they were saying, no, we are Devo, we're de-evolutionized. We're not going backwards. We are men. Are we not men? Yes, we are men. And there's a beauty in being a man who's fulfilling his role. And the beauty is he's protecting his loved ones from the threats that are out there to destroy us. And I'm not a soothsayer of doom. This is all fixable, but we just have to have the desire to do it. So
That's
take
awesome.
a course, get a Sentinel Handbook, get the free men's strategy guide to critical thinking. It's right on the front page. It's a PDF. Sign up, get it. It won't cost you a dime. 5 minutes of your time to upload it. And I'll say something about this, the name Neo Masculinity. The Google definition, to think about how insidious this is, says that a man cannot be masculine unless he embraces changing social norms. Well, what happens if that social norm is not based on facts or relevant science? What happens if that social norm is a complete lie? Google's telling us to be men, we have to lie to be masculine. Can you believe that definition? We were like, and so when we started hearing masculinity with toxic, the people that I've worked with the last few years, we got to change this. We've got to somehow change that narrative and let men know that it's okay to be masculine.
It's okay to be men.
It's okay to be men. And think about this. And they might not admit this, Anthony, but I haven't met a woman yet in personal conversation that doesn't like a car door or a restaurant door being open for her. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Anthony, and I love you and your family and what you represent. You're authentic, and guess what, ladies and gentlemen, the audience out there that stayed long enough to listen, thank you for being here. But you know what? When you tune in to authentic people, men or women, then you know that things are okay. And I can sleep now, and I said this earlier, I can sleep better at night knowing that men like yourself are out there taking care of business.
Thank you, brother. I'm grateful. So grateful for you on here. Thanks. And we'll put all the contact stuff down below for John. Please go look in the description, get all that contact. John, thanks for being here today.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you, Anthony, and thank your wife, and thank the audience. Thank you.
Hey, audience, last week, another breaker. I mean, just we're blowing the numbers off the doors. YouTube at 72,000 subscribers. It's crazy. Jonathan this week is on a run. He's on a tear. If he gets subscribers, he gets a raise. We're working hard on blowing that up for him. Jonathan's got a 5,000 person add-on. He gets 5,000 more subscribers. He gets a raise. You could be part of him getting a raise. If you could do that right now, it means the world to me. Look, the numbers do make a difference. We get great guests like John come on and guide us, right? We get great guests. It does make a world of difference. So if you could do that right now, like and subscribe. We noticed that only 30% of you listened. You guys watched the whole podcast. You got to the end, and only 30% of you were subscribers. So just take 2 seconds, like and subscribe, hit the little bell down there, and all that makes a difference. So as always, thanks for listening today.